This is Everybody Pulls the Tarp with your host, Andrew Moses. Each week, Andrew talks with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets.
My guest is Washington Commanders running back Austin Ekeler.
Every day we write a page of our life. The best thing is you have the pen in your hand.
Three-time Olympic gold medalist Tessa Virtue. Welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Thanks for thinking of me, and I'm a big fan of the podcast and of yours. So anytime you text or call, I'm here.
Mike Mills from REM.
The key to that was realizing at some point fairly early on that this was probably our life's work.
Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas.
My guest is 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, Stephanie White.
The hardest thing for a coach is trying to prioritize how much time you put in one area or another.
Former MLB player, coach, and manager Clint Hurdle.
That is the best title of any podcast out there in America, and the content matches up to it. Andrew, you do a fantastic job. I'm a big fan. Keep up the great work.
World-renowned organizing expert Shira Gill.
You can improve your life simply by removing things.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people.
Let's go. Hi, everyone. This week, I'm excited to welcome Amanda Goetz back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, you may remember my first conversation with Amanda from way back in early 2021. But many of you are new here, so let me quickly tell you about Amanda and get this all set up for you. Amanda is a 2-time company founder and 5-time chief marketing officer. After spending 2 decades building and growing consumer-facing brands, Amanda pivoted her career to writing, teaching, and coaching ambitious working parents on how to balance success and life. She is the creator of one of my favorite email newsletters. It's called Life's a Game, and it always is a must-open for me whenever it hits my inbox. Amanda is also the author of the upcoming book, Toxic Grit: How to Have It All and Actually Love What You Have. Now, over the years, Amanda has become one of my go-to sources for ideas and frameworks on how to juggle life's seemingly never-ending to-do lists and competing priorities, all while staying focused on living a life of intention and purpose. And in our latest conversation, Amanda shares powerful ideas on how to overcome misalignment in our lives, how to juggle the different characters we all play, why it's important to embrace intentional imbalance, and so much more. Our conversation is all about ambition with intention, and it is filled with actionable ideas that we all can implement to start taking the micro steps towards becoming the best version of ourselves, all while pulling the tarp for the people in our lives that matter most. Amanda's authenticity and courage to do things on her terms and help others along the way always makes me feel inspired, motivated, and ready to conquer the ups and downs of life. I hope you take away as much from this conversation as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Amanda Goetz. Where I want to begin, I'm going to ask you a question that I know I have not ever asked before on this podcast. We're recording this conversation in late August, and I've got to know, where were you and how did you find out that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce had gotten engaged?
Oh, I have a good story. I was in therapy, and my best friend, who I went to the Eras Tour concert with, I just see a text drop down during therapy because I do Zoom therapy, and I'm like in my little chair and I see the drop down that says, they're engaged. And I literally stopped therapy. I was like mid talking about like trauma with my parents. And I was just like, hold on one second. And I like locked out of therapy and I went to Instagram and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I had to like get back into therapy.
It has been so much fun watching, I think, the reactions and the conversation that has come out of this. And I know there are people out there who are like, what is everybody so excited about? What is everybody so wrapped up in some other people's love that you don't even know? But I have to say, this has been really fun to watch. I mean, we as a society have there's so much negative, there's so much conflict. I mean, you've got two people who, by all accounts, are great people, when you watch from afar, and two people who, for months and the last year and a half, we were told this is a marketing scheme. They're not really in love. And we saw on the New Heights podcast, and we've seen in recent days, it looks like these are two people that are really in love, that have found something really special.
And there's so much tangled up into this. It's like watching the NFL celebrate this as well, and what she's been able to do as a powerful woman for the NFL, and increasing viewership of different types of people. And she's a 35-year-old woman who has been so open about keeping her heart open and embracing heartbreak, and then falling in love again, and heartbreak. And she waited for the right person who deserved her. And I think we all can learn something from that, especially me as a mom of two girls who look up to her. And then also watching him completely celebrate her and her power and what she is able to do. And you watch, even his brother is just shouting from the rooftops how amazing she is. And it's just as a woman who has experienced a lot of men in her life trying to make her smaller so they felt bigger, it is emotional. You watch this and you're like, there are guys out there that just want to continue to put women and hold the spotlight for them.
Amanda, I don't know. There's a reason why I started this conversation this way. And not just because I was curious on your take on this. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before, or if anybody's ever told you this, but I see a lot of parallels between the way Taylor Swift operates and the way you operate. And I say that from a standpoint of some of the things that you just described there, like the authenticity, the way you communicate. You don't write songs, but you write tweets and LinkedIn posts and newsletters that are so authentic and so transparent. And then there's also this idea, she's constantly and has constantly reinvented herself. I think that you constantly reinvent yourself. I mean, we had our first conversation on this podcast back in early 2021, and I was just exhausted going through all the things that you've accomplished since 2021, right? So I think that just like she puts out a new album every year, every 2 years, you put out your own new album into the world in your own way. And I just think there's so many parallels to the two stories. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
I have never, but that is maybe the nicest compliment I've ever received in my life. And I'm good now. I don't care what else happens. Being compared to Taylor Swift, I'm I'll take it. I'm done.
Well, let's dive a little deeper. The last time you were on the podcast, I just alluded to, it was early 2021. You were deep in the trenches building your second startup. This was your VC-backed consumer brand, House of Wise. You eventually sold the business. I'm curious, just transporting yourself back to that period of time, that era, if we want to keep this theme going. What was if you had to distill it down to, what was your biggest learning from that phase of your career?
There were so many learnings during that time, because just to kind of set context, I was still going through my divorce, navigating what co-parenting looked like. And then on top of that, I was building in public in a way that I had never done before. And I learned so much about parasocial relationships and where my boundaries are. I think when you're in the trenches of processing trauma, the line between being vulnerable and oversharing and using seeking validation is blurry. It's very blurry when you're processing trauma. Social media is a slippery slope for many of us. We know that's our connection. It's a tool for connection, but so many people are also just watching and spectators of your life. And not everybody wishes you well. Some people are just spectators of the sport of your life. So I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about building companies and what lights me up and what drains me. And I raised over $2 million of VC capital, and I learned a lot about that. And it was wild. I think one of my biggest takeaways actually happened years later. I went through a pretty dark time after selling the company. I sold it very early in an equity deal because we were on the VC train. We were raising capital. We were on the road to raising the Series A. And then it was early 2022, and the war in Ukraine had broken out. VC was now shifting into not CPG, it's only AI. I had hundreds of conversations. We couldn't get someone to sign on, so we sold it. And I realized how quiet things got. Like once I wasn't like a shiny founder with this fast growing company, people who I had been social with kind of fell away. And I will never forget my therapist used the analogy of moths versus fireflies. When you are shining bright, you attract more moths, and you have to learn that you are just a firefly. You will choose when to turn on your light, turn off your light, and it doesn't affect who's around you. And I think we live in a very transactional culture. I had to learn what my boundaries were and how to kind of protect my own heart and energy, because I'm the type of person that's like, no, we're doing life together. Like you care about me. And so I've had to do a lot of work to understand that obviously when you are building something and it's exciting, a lot of people want to be around. What happens when you don't have anything to offer people? Who's still around after that?
What happens when you turn the lights off? I always ask this question, and I look at my life and I say, who are friends and who are groupies? Mm-hmm. And I think the difference between friends and groupies is that groupies hang around when you have something to offer, and friends are there regardless. And the friendship, there's a place in social media, in email newsletter creating, in writing books, in hosting podcasts for all kinds of people, right? You want to influence and affect as many people as possible. But I think one of the important things that I've learned as well is this idea that you've got to recognize like kind of what category each person fits in and like level set your expectations accordingly, if that makes sense.
It does. I literally talk about this in my book, casting the supporting cast of your life, like who's in the audience, who's in the supporting cast. Like it truly is. Once you start to place people in these categories, it's very man in the arena. Like who gets a say in your life are the people. I mean, even coming out with a book, it's like people who haven't even read the book are like already, obviously lots of people have given great reviews who have gotten the arcs, but like people who I know who haven't read the book are like, don't trust this source, like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I want to take criticism and feedback is a good thing, but you have to know who you're taking it from. If it's another author, if it's my editor, if it's someone I really value their opinion, and if they're giving me feedback that will improve me as a person, a friend, a partner, a leader, or an author, I want to take that. We all should be coachable. But if somebody is just wanting to attack your character, as a parent, like I use the analogy, if somebody's like, I hate your blue hair, and you're like, I don't have blue hair, you can't change that, right? Like you can't focus on things that you can't change and you don't actually have.
Very well said. Amanda, I'm curious, a couple of minutes ago, you alluded to this idea of like, you kind of identified that there were things that gave you energy or filled your tank, and then there were things that drained your energy, drained the tank. What specifically was one thing that you had identified that you said, this really fills the bucket? Like, was there one thing in particular that you said, like, I got to get more of that?
The through line of my entire career that I can see over and over again is when I have the capacity and the agency to build something that really has an impact on someone's life. And I can shape the storytelling and like help them feel connected to that and bring people together in a way that they feel less alone. So branding, marketing, storytelling, community building, light me up. dealing with investors and raising capital and the CEO side. And I'll be the first to say, I love being a CMO, not a CEO. And I know that now. I think that there was something in that I felt like I needed to prove to everyone that I could build a business. And I had to sit with like, where was that coming from? Did I not feel validated? Did I not feel enough or smart enough to hang in this like Silicon Valley crew if I wasn't a founder and instead playing a supporting role to someone else building it? And I was like, actually, this is exactly where I love to be. And I'm okay with that.
There's a lot of like CEO-like qualities in you. And there's a lot of CEO-like responsibilities that you have in running this portfolio career for yourself. Talk about that. Like, how long did you wrestle with that? And how big of a hurdle was that idea to overcome?
The mindset shift I had to make was this binary. People love binary thinking, right? Like you're either this or you're this. And let's talk about it in this lens. You're either a full-time worker or you're a founder and creator and solopreneur. My happy place started to happen when I embraced the middle. So I love having flexibility and optionality around money and finances. So writing a newsletter that now generates around 250K in revenue, it's like, okay, that's now something that I have, that I own. But I'm not, I guess I view that more as like a creator business, not necessarily the CEO of a VC-backed company, right? Like I have agency autonomy. And building on that, that led to this book deal. Okay, so I have an advance and royalties, and that leads to speaking engagements and great. But the cool thing is, I spent a few years kind of building up these different portfolio pieces and optimizing them to the point where what took 40 hours a week when I was building them now takes about 10 hours a week. So when I was presented a full-time job opportunity to go be a CMO of a company launching next year, I could take it. And so it's not an either or. And I think people want to identify or self-identify. It's like, oh, now I'm a creator and a solopreneur. And you feel like you're abandoning yourself if you go back and take a full-time job because you've been touting like, oh, the freedom, the agency. It's like, we have to understand that many of us will be living in this middle ground.
Let's start talking about like some of the systems and the frameworks that you put in place to make sure that you're able to do this. And that's what I mean by like CEO-like qualities. You may not be endeavoring to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a venture-backed startup, but
yeah,
you're organizing something. You're self-motivating yourself and keeping a lot of different balls in the air on a regular basis. Talk about that.
I appreciate that. Okay, so let's break down a couple of things. First, this idea of alignment, like we got to seek alignment, right? We hear that term a lot. Bring your whole self to work. I'm trying to find alignment in life. The unlock for me really started to happen when I identified that we inherently as humans have a lot of misalignment in our lives. So let me give a very kind of like one-to-one example. In a company, you set a North Star goal, and then you delegate. You say, okay, marketing department, you have these goals. Sales, you have these goals. Product, you need these goals. They're all going to ladder up to this North Star goal. And yet when we as humans sit down, we're like, I want to be happy. And I'm trying to find alignment. But we don't stop to look at the different verticals or different parts of ourselves that are within them. So let's break this down as a human level. There's a part of you that wants to kill it at work, right? And there's a part of you that wants to be the best, most present parent and the best, most present partner and have the best sex life. And then there's a part of you that wants to be the best friend and see your friends all the time. Then there's a part of you that doesn't want to see anyone and you want to travel the world and be alone and like discover yourself. We are trying to merge all of those parts of ourselves into one human, when those are competing identities. In a vacuum, they don't play well together. Because if the version of me that wants to make a lot of money, be financially independent, prove it to myself that I can do this next big milestone at work, if I let that version of me call all the shots, I would be super stressed all the time with my kids. I'm short, I'm snappy, I have no sex drive because I'm super on and in like an aggressive state. That would take over. So you have to create an operating rhythm as a human to kind of cast the characters. Who is getting the hierarchy right now in this moment, in this day, in this week, in this month? And setting these touch points to allow yourself to say, hey, is one kind of taking over the script here? And who's kind of growing a little bit more toxic? And that's where the title of this book comes, like which characters are growing a little more toxic and which ones are feeling a little left out of the movie of your life.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today.
I think hierarchy is a tricky word for especially working parents. How dare I say that work is more important than my kids right now? And when I give somebody the freedom to say, what if work was more important than your kid in this 1 hour? What would you do differently? Oh, well, maybe you put your kid in front of the TV and you'd go and like work on a project for 1 hour. And you communicate that to them. But then when you're done with that hour, you actually hold the boundary and say, I'm going to now get up, shut my computer. I'm not going to multitask and look at Slack and email. And now I'm going to be very present and intentional with my kid. And I say this often, I'd rather be a very present mom for 2 hours a day than a distracted, multitasking mom for 4. I'm not soaking in anything. If I'm trying to be on Slack, take a call while my kid's playing with cars on the, like, it doesn't work. So hierarchy is actually a good thing. Compartmentalization is a good thing. And yet we are trying to allow each of these versions of ourselves to coexist. And they're just in like this WWE battle inside of us.
I find that the multitasking just drains me more than almost anything else, to the point where like I've made physical like technology changes here. Like I'm looking here at this desk here. I used to have 3 monitors. All I have now is the one I'm looking at. And it just got to a point where like I was like feeling it physically, I was feeling it mentally, and I felt like it had become this like microcosm for my life. I was like, I got to reduce the number of monitors, and it cut the number of tabs I had open significantly.
Yeah.
I am curious, was there like a moment where you said, and I want to get to the book, and you started to kind of allude to some of the principles that I know you're going to share in the book. You're introducing to this idea of character theory, this framework for understanding these 10 internal characters that we all play, the CEO, the partner, the caregiver, the soloist, and others. I am curious, your upcoming book, Toxic Grit, How to Have It All and Actually Love What You Have. You're sharing what it took to climb the corporate ladder, build and sell your VC-backed company, all while being a single mom of 3 and enjoying the life that you are building, I should say. It offers this bold redefinition of this word ambition. Take me back to the moment that you said, okay, I've learned these principles and that's wonderful, but I have to write this book. Like, what was that? I'm always interested to ask authors, like, where is that moment that you say, like, I have to write this book?
Oh my goodness. I tell a story in the book that is really the origin of me realizing all of this idea of character theory. And so I'll share that story. And then it's been compounding over the last couple of years to the point where I sat down one day and I was like, I just need to get what's in my head out, because I feel like it's all just been sitting in here in an 8-page proposal, just like kind of poured out of me in one sitting. And I was just like, listen, this has just been in my head, on my heart. I'm going to put it out there. If an agent likes it, great. If not, I just wanted to get it out there. And the origin was this very specific day in the fall of 2017. I had 3 kids under the age of 4. I got up. I took my older kids to preschool. I jumped on the subway. I went down to the financial district. I was working all day. I'm like killing it in this, like in my career. I'm leading a big team, but I've got to leave every meeting every 2 hours to go pump in the lactation room. And then I leave at 5 because I need to get home to relieve the nanny. I'm bathing the kids, trying to also answer emails. I get the kids to bed and I'm sitting there and I'm rocking the baby to sleep. And I take out my phone, because when you get really good at holding a baby and being able to type, especially by 3. And I take out my phone and I type the words, "You can have it all." And I was like, the all isn't the friction point here. It was the you. Because in that day, when I started to think about work version of me doesn't want to leave to go pump, doesn't want to leave at 5. I would much rather stay until 8 and work on this project and be with the team and go grab drinks with people afterwards and push my career forward. Mom version of me didn't want to leave my baby that day. I didn't. And then there's a version of me, and people who follow me know this, I still love to a night a quarter, get drunk on tequila, go dancing with my girlfriends. Socialite version of me doesn't care about any of this. So it was in that moment that I'm like, I have really got to start to create space for these different parts of me, because the more I try to merge them, I know that work and mom modes take over everything. And then I have no space for these other parts of me that make me who I am and light me up.
In the book, you talk about this idea that when unmanaged, and you just alluded to it all these roles collide. It results in this exhaustion. It results in this burnout. But there is a path to higher, you've proven it. There's a path to higher productivity, more creativity, stronger engagement in your life and alignment in your life while you're doing a lot of these different things. So long, as you just mentioned moments ago, you create the space intentionally for it. But not only do you have to create the space for it, and I've learned this in my own life, and I've learned this from watching you, not only do you have to intentionally create the space, but then you have to maintain that space, right? You can clean your house once, but if you don't maintain your house and keep it clean, it's going to be a pigsty and a place that nobody wants to visit and you don't want to live. The same thing with a garden. You could plant it and water it for a month, but if you don't maintain it, it's going to be a garden that nobody wants to look at and nobody wants to eat the vegetables from. You talk in the book about a couple key ideas that I want to dig in. You talk about this idea of auditing the characters. Talk me through that. Is that something systematic? Do you have this character audit of the Amanda Goetz life every month, every 3 months, every 6? What does that look like? How do you audit the characters in your life?
Yeah, so there's definitely a monthly moment that I step away and I kind of carve out about 2 hours where I'm like, what does the next month look like? And let me look at these different versions of me and which ones are getting the most screen time and which ones are feeling like they've been written off the script and maybe need a little bit more screen time, right? So that's kind of step one. And then I would say a whole chapter in this book is called spin cycles. A spin cycle in a washing machine is the last cycle after it has all that water in it and it needs to run really fast to get all the heaviness out so that when you move it to the dryer, it's lighter. So many of us are running a race with a moving finish line. I am big on finish lines. Like, let's run a spin cycle. So I think people hear me being this kind of like anti-hustle culture person. To me, hustle culture is ambition without intention. If I very clearly, for the next 3 months as this book is coming out, I'm hustling. I'm on the road a lot more. I am working a lot more. I'm prioritizing that over hanging out with friends or building community or being able to be at everything for my kids. But I've said that there is a spin cycle at the end. I've made a touch point, this moment. It's going to be in November where I'm taking a week off and I'm reassessing. Is this the right balance? Probably not. And so December and January and February, work will probably move to the side burner, back burner. And I'm going to be way more focused on friends and community and my kids. And I think, like, not to bring up Taylor Swift again, but I think a perfect example.
Bring her up as much as you want.
Okay. But a perfect example, she's running a spin cycle right now. She went on the Eras tour, was also writing an album, was on a plane and performing for hours a week. Probably not seeing her friends as much, probably not having as much like free time and fun for hobbies. But now she's running a spin cycle and she talked about like, I'm baking sourdough and I'm seeing my friends and I'm playing with her soon to be nieces. We as humans keep moving finish lines and we don't allow ourselves these end moments to say, okay, this is what's important to me for right now. And when this moment comes, I'm going to stop and reassess. I think companies also struggle with this.
You just keep going.
You just keep going.
The cycles never end. Yeah.
So spin cycles can happen as often as you work really hard for 3 hours, then you come up for air and you take a walk and you say, how am I feeling? I have a spin cycle every day at 3:00 where I'm either preparing to go get my kids or I'm saying, do I want to keep working or am I ready to just say that was enough for today? I have a spin cycle every few weeks where I've been pushing really hard and I maybe have a week where I kind of push non-priority meetings and I say, let me come up and say, like, are the things I'm working on still lighting me up or still moving towards the goal that I had set? So it's this idea of we all are driving like a Ferrari, like we're all trying to drive. And if you've ever ridden in a sports car, driving 90 miles per hour feels really like the speed limit. It just like goes really smoothly. And then when you try to drive the speed limit in a really nice car, you feel like you're like a turtle. You're like this. But driving the speed limit is still the speed limit. That's the rate that you're like supposed to be going. But driving the speed limit is like literally what they're telling you to do. So why do we as humans struggle to downshift and drive the speed limit? And I would ask, what's going on with you that you're struggling to stop or pause or even just drive the speed limit for a second to reassess where you're going?
Amanda, you kind of just framed something for me that like I have really been kind of pondering for a long time. Like I have long kind of thought about that phrase work-life balance. And I've always kind of, for me, felt like work-life balance wasn't the right like nomenclature and terminology for the idea. And I have always used this idea of work-life integration because I never really felt like this idea of work-life balance was attainable because like what is balance? And like that implies that there's this like always this like 50-50 type thing, equal share and such. I've long used this phrase work-life integration and I've always kind of challenged myself, like, are my priorities in the right place? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing enough of the right things? Am I where my feet are? And you just clarify this for me. And now I think like forever, I'm going to think about this idea of ambition with intention, right? You talked about this idea of like the ambition without intention being when things really get out of whack and understanding like how your ambition is presenting itself in different components of your life and what it means and what the goal is. Because so often, like you talked about it, like individually and companies struggle with this, like you mentioned. I mean, there's no like stopping on the mountain climb to like admire the view and take a breath. And you just framed it up for me in a way that I think I'll never forget. This idea of like checking in with yourself to make sure, like, does the ambition have intention? Are there boundaries around this component of my ambition? I think that's just something I know I will never forget from this point forward, Amanda.
Well, and I think there's two traps we all fall into. The first being the urgency trap, and the second being the significance trap. We've all heard of this, like when everything is important, nothing is, and when everything is urgent, nothing is. What I like to talk through with people is what is actually going on under the layers of when you drop everything to go answer that email or Slack. What is actually happening? You just said, hey, I'm going to go like play with my kids for an hour. Okay, for 1 hour, you're going to play with your kids. But now all of a sudden a Slack comes in and you sit down and now we're like sucked into this. And you're like, well, now that I'm here, I'll also respond to this. And what's actually happening there? Most of the time when I'm kind of peeling back these layers with someone that I'm coaching, it's actually a fear of abandonment or a fear that you will lose someone's love, attention, the idea that you are a gold star worker. And ambition is not one dimensional. We assign ambition to just work. But ambition, you can be ambitious about being a good parent. You can be ambitious about being a great partner. But yet we assign ambition. So this idea of looking at this cast and saying, okay, what does it look like for me to place being a great parent on the front burner for the next month? What does that look like? And we can't be everything all the time. We can't. That is a losing battle. The idea of work-life balance doesn't take into account all of these other characters. Like, where is work-life balance? Where is party Amanda who wants to go dancing with her girlfriends? Like, if I try to balance 50-50 work and life, like usually life is like taking care of a house and or kids if you have them. So I really implore people to understand, if you set a goal for the next hour to do something and you set a timer and you get pulled away, was it really that important? Was it really that significant? And you can use practical tools like 10-10-10. Will this matter in 10 minutes if I don't respond? Will this matter in 10 hours if I don't respond? Will this matter in 10 days if I don't respond? Chances are, most of the time, something can wait 10 hours or even 10 days. That's why I don't check email every single day. I will scan it, but I don't really check it. Because most of the time, if you miss something, it's okay. It can wait a day or two.
Or if it's really important, they're going to come back to you.
Yeah. So I would really implore people to get really intentional and say, just start in 1 hour increments. For the next hour, work is really important to me. I am on this podcast, barring the amount of craziness happening behind me, like this is my priority. If my kid's school calls and somebody's sick, sure, I will take that call. But outside of that, this is where I'm at. When this ends, I can then go, okay, maybe I'll go for a walk and take care of myself. But how can you kind of just start in 1 hour increments?
Amanda, one of the things, and I love how you frame it up, that we typically just apply this idea of ambition to our professional lives, our careers, but really we can be ambitious about all the different aspects of our lives, and those are important. Something that I talk a lot about with my wife and I talk a lot about with friends is this idea that, like, I want my kids to see me working hard. I think part of my work ethic and part of my drive comes from watching my parents work hard and watching my grandparents work hard. And I want my kids to see me work hard, and there's value in that. And I think so much of it is, if I have to travel for work and I've got to be away from the family, or I have to miss some type of one of the kids' activities, if there's no way to make that work, I just explain to the kids why, right? That dad's job is important for these reasons. And when I'm going to go do this meeting, it's with a purpose and there's a reason. And they always seem to understand that and appreciate that. And that's something that's important to me as well. And something that I think about often. Do you think about that idea, like framing it as, hey, like showing my kids what work ethic looks like is a pretty good idea too.
Incredible. And I love that you brought this up because as a single mom for 7 years, I now have a partner. I'm getting married next year, but
By the way, I was as excited to see that you had gotten engaged again as we all were for Taylor. Not to circle back, but for all the reasons we described, I'm always over here rooting for you. And that was just an awesome moment as well.
He's an incredible human. He was so worth the wait and worth the work that I had to put in to feel worthy enough of this kind of love. But for 7 years, I was a single mom building a startup, and my kids were grade school age. And we would have very clear conversations about, first of all, responsibility. I don't know what my kids' homework is. I don't. They know that's not my job. I have a full-time job, and they are responsible for writing in their agenda that their teacher gives them. And I will say that all three of my kids are in the gifted program and straight A students. And I have never once been like, don't forget you have a vocabulary quiz tomorrow. I don't know when their vocabulary quiz is. They will come to me and say, Mom, can you quiz me? And I'll be like, yeah, let's do this. And we do it while I'm cooking dinner. But the work ethic piece is so key. And also the role that me showing that I have this is what I'm focused on. This is my job. And if you need help, ask me. But it's teaching them that they also have to take ownership over their job, and they do it. So I would implore people I think that women specifically really struggle with this, like giving somebody the ability to show if they're capable of stepping up to the plate. Like I now, like getting married again, there's so many things that I do differently this time around. I am letting him step up and take over responsibilities and show that he can be there and do different things. And when you give people the space to rise to the occasion, most of the time they do it. And my daughter, it's so cool. Like I get up every day at 5 to write, especially when I'm on deadline for a book or a newsletter. And I get up every day at 5 to 7 and I write and I drink my coffee. And for a while, my one daughter was getting up early and she'd see that. And I'd be like, I've got 20 more minutes left. I'll come out. And over time, she started to wake up and bring down her little notebook and she'd write at the same time. And I'm like, they will watch you. And if we pretend like we don't work, we're setting them up for this unrealistic expectation of, wait, how did my mom never work and like was always there for me? It's like, no, we've got to communicate that. So I love that you're doing that.
Amanda, you are an inspiration to us all. As we get ready to wrap up our conversation, and you've been so generous with your time, I want to ask you, like, you have this extraordinary ability to see potential in things that I don't think anybody else can. Like, have you thought about like where that comes from?
Where I grew up and how I grew up, I think would be pretty like eye-opening to a lot of people. Like I grew up in a town of 800 people in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. My dad lived out of his car during high school. Neither of my parents went to college. And I remember I spent a lot of time alone as a kid and just looking around being like, there's a whole world out there, but I've got to dream it up because I can't see it. It was so homogenous where I was and just groupthink, not in a bad way, just like where I was from, there's not a lot of diversity of thought of people, etc. And so I had to keep like dreaming it until I could see it. And I think now more than ever, I would hope that people push towards curiosity over certainty. Nothing is certain. There's a gray area in everything. And yet I think social media has really pushed us to binary thinking and certainty. Nothing is certain. And we have to be more curious about everything that's happening around us. And I find that if I ever start to feel certain about something, that's a scary place. And I want to continue to be curious because I know that there's so many other viewpoints out there that I want to not shut things down and continue to try to like stay open, because that's the only way we will make this world feel better.
All right, Amanda, I'm going to say it again. You are an inspiration to us all. If I must say so myself, the Taylor Swift of the creator economy, the Taylor Swift of the portfolio career. All right, we've all got to go out and we've got to pre-order your book, Toxic Grit, How to Have It All and Actually Love What You Have. Thank you so much, Amanda, for spending some time with me this week. Thank you. Again, you are recertified as a member of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family, forever a tarp puller, certified tarp puller ×2. All right, Amanda, thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.